Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and regularly do I get questions from a lot of you guys asking me which specs should you play and which classes should you play. And a lot of you guys have asked that question primarily when watching me do some Mythic Pluses. I usually like to get in on any specs that I enjoy, be it Survival Hunter, Feral Druid, Frost DK, and just blast out a couple of Mythic Pluses on my alts for the week. But a lot of you guys maybe want to play this as a new main or as a future alt, and you're looking for a safe class. Pug world is kind of a scary world, as pugs sometimes will kick you for even looking at them wrong. In pugs, you have to play the right classes, the best of the meta, and a lot of you guys have asked, what are some of the safe classes that are good right now for the seasonal stuff in Mythic Plus in Shadowlands? So we got a lot of data for Season 1 of what everybody's playing, and in this video I want to give you guys some of the safest class ideas that are looking really solid and promising when it comes to doing Mythic Pluses, casual or competitive, in this Season 1 of Shadowlands. Before we get into the list, I do want to say this: I feel like all of you guys should play whatever class, whatever spec you enjoy. Pug world is a scary, mean world, and I really do think you guys should consider into looking for actual guilds. Guilds are like real guilds, not social guilds or those guilds that invite everybody that's leveling and don't actually get any progression. Real guilds with real progression, with real people, with real characters. Those are the ones that you really should be looking forward to. Inside of those guilds, you actually will have opportunity potentially to play what you like. For example, my guildies don't really care what spec or class I play. A lot of you guys have said, oh wow, rogues are not really looking good for Castle Nathria, yet for some reason I still have a raid spot inside of my guild. Inside of guilds, there's opportunity for you to impress people, as well as show your skills and opportunity for you to shine where pugs won't even give you the chance. So really, in the future, as you're playing Shadowlands, if you really want to have a wholesome, good experience of any expansion, really do consider looking to guilds in the future. But let's start with a list of classes that are safe in the pug world. The first class that's very safe is a Druid. We have Boomkin, Restoration, as well as even Guardian. The reason Boomkins are so good is because, well, Convoke. It's basically the new I wound button. On a fairly short cooldown, it lets you top the charge in AoE as well as in single target. It's a really powerful ability. But I guess Druids do have other capabilities. They are a range class which are looking really solid in Mythic Pluses because there's a lot more mechanics that are actually quite deadly to the melee. They have a bunch of utilities like a Silence Beam, they have Soothe, they have other utilities from Typhoon, Ursols, depending on how you talent yourself, so that's a lot of tools to help your group succeed. Then we have the Restoration Druids, which there's a little bit of competition between Resto Druid and Resto Shaman, and while Restoration Druid doesn't look like the strongest healer of all of them, is definitely very solid still going forward into this expansion. So if your group for some reason doesn't need a bunker but needs a healer, Resto Druid is still a very solid choice that can also pop in a boomy form and still press Convoke. Then there's Guardian Druids, and while I can't say that Guardian is an S++ tier tank, they're still very solid this expansion. They just have a lot of health. They're a massive sponge that just absorbs magic damage, physical damage, you name it. They just take it all to the face and keep ticking. They're actually very solid, and they hold quite a lot of AoE damage with the right legendary setup. So being a druid, you have 3 really solid options to look forward to in pugs. Next class on this list is going to be monks. These guys have gotten a lot of new attention recently. Woundwalker is becoming very quickly a very strong melee, probably one of the strongest melee in the game, with a lot of people re-rolling into Woundwalker monks. They're just really hard hitting. For some reason, they just hit harder than any other melee, so even when you don't have a lot of gear, you're still miles ahead in DPS of someone in the same item level, but a different class. While melee don't really have a lot of places in Mythic Pluses because, well, mechanics are a lot scarier now with this expansion, Woundwalkers are blasting big damage right now, whether it's AoE, whether it's single target, and with great mobility and decent defensives, it does give them opportunity in Mythic Pluses to shine. But even if you don't end up playing Woundwalker, Brewmaster is still, like Bear Druid, while not an S++ tier tank, it is still very solid. It actually has quite a bit of damage with certain legendary setups, but in terms of tanking the damage to the face, it's actually in a pretty decent spot. It did go through a little bit of turbulence back in the alpha and beta, but what ended up Brewmaster is still a very solid tank. I don't think they're nearly as strong as they were back in BFA for Mythic Pluses, but they're still a very strong competitor, and if your group does need a tank, you will be a great class for it. Third class on this list is going to have to be Mage. Now, some DPS in the game have massive utility that they can bring into groups that's just insanely good, and other times you have classes that are just there for the raw damage. We saw a couple of those classes getting stacked back to back to back in BFA. In particular, it was a lot of Outlaw rogues, since it just did more damage than every other class and had crazy utility. But looks like the damage now falls to the fire mages. We have them on this list primarily as fire, because fire just puts up ridiculous amount of dams. They are the backbone of every group, and groups will literally play around combustion, which right now, if the mage plays properly, is only about a minute cooldown. You will literally pull mobs based whether your mage has combustion or not, as combustion lets you overcome massive numbers of enemies, armies of enemies, if the mage plays his cards correctly. It is incredible amounts of damage they put up. That's why we have them on this list, because just the raw DPS in Mythic Pluses, I feel like there's not a lot of classes that can compete with it. Next class on this list is going to be a Marksmanship Hunter. Were you aware that Marksman, the spec in particular, is literally the most played spec in Mythic Pluses right now? From the data we can collect, this is literally the most populated spec in the game right now. This number, of course, is going to vary whether you're looking at all Mythic Pluses, your lower keys, your really high keys that are, for the hardcore pushers, but on average, there's more people playing Marksmanship than any other spec in the game right now. And even though I personally play Survival, and I just got my Legendary that will make Survival so good in Mythic Pluses, Hunters for Marksman is still the go-to for a variety of players, especially if you pair it together with a Night Fae Covenant. The AoE damage it puts out plus the single target damage it can do is actually quite nuts. The variety of different talents you can run in different Mythic Pluses in order to adjust your situation, whether it is going to be a boss heavy Tyrannical week or an adds heavy 45 week, allows the Survival Hunter to change a couple talents in order to suit themselves a little bit better towards different environments. They're just very adaptable and very versatile, and they're just very solid option if you don't want to play a caster. Also, they don't have casts, so if you play in a mage and you get interrupted by mechanics like quaking, on a hunter you don't have to worry about it at all, so there is a little bit of an advantage in that department as well. Mages are very popular, but so are marksmanship hunters, and you can actually run 2 marksman hunters with a windwalker and you'll have crazy utility, and the windwalker will bring the extra physical damage that hunters can put out for bosses for some really ludicrous damage. Finally on this list is going to be demon hunters, primarily because of vengeance, but Havoc also will have a little bit of an honorable mention. Vengeance is a monster inside of Mythic Pluses, actual demons inside of dungeons. They deal incredible damage, especially when you pair them together with the Kyrian playstyle. They have a couple different Legos, whether for survivability or for damage. The damage they put out, even when they go for a survivability legendary, is insane. Trash mobs melt to demon hunters, and it's actually quite a sight to behold. It's ridiculous just how far ahead they are in AoE damage than any other tank. Then you also have sigils with crowd control, like Fear of Sigil, as well as a Silence Sigil, that gives you a lot of control to enemy mobs, a ranged interrupt, ability to purge enemy buffs, and passive magic damage reduction, which every other tank wishes they had, especially in an expansion with so much magic damage going out in majority of the dungeons. Havoc Demon Hunter is also really not bad. As a DPS, they bring quite a bit of utility, decent damage, especially in the AoE department. Metamorphosis is still very strong, while Havoc Demon Hunters are not a top tier, S tier, or even A tier class right now for Mythic Pluses. They're still very solid if your group already has a tank. But Vengeance Demon Hunters on this list, mostly for the Vengeance spec, but Havoc is also not bad either. If you play any of these specs with a bit of gear and the right legendaries, there's a good chance you will not get dropped immediately from your Mythic Plus groups. These are some of the strongest classes for Mythic Pluses in Season 1 right now. I did not mention every single solid class as well as spec. I just wanted to mention the top 5 strongest, primarily for PUGS. So if you want to level in your next class, any of those are looking really solid, whether you want to be a melee DPS, tanking, ranged DPS, or even potentially healing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and how would you adjust this list if you were to make a list of top 5 strongest classes that PUGS will not kick from the groups in Mythic Pluses for Season 1 right now. Let me know all that in the comments below, but thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.